Hello, welcome to today's choice event. Today we have the number 64, and I'm super happy to have so many of you already here in today's webinar. More will join in a bit, but I give you a short intro already into today's session, and then we can start all together. So, first of all, my name is Lara. I'm one of the co-founders of the Climate Choice. You might or might not have joined before. If you did, then you know how it works. For all the others, I give you a small tour so you can participate the best and really benefit from that 1 hour we spend more or less during lunchtime together to really get us all started in climate transformation and decarbonization. So today's session will be about how to navigate the product carbon footprint calculation and specifically how to deal with credibility gaps that we still see in data issues. And for that, I will have two experts joining me in a bit. But before I explain you how you can participate, because as you see, we use here the webinar setup, so you can see me, I don't see you. But there are many of you joining. So I invite you to already in the beginning now, check out our question and Q&A section here directly in Zoom. So maybe it's on the bottom or on the top. If you have it in German, it's Fragen und Antworten. And you can directly post in your name and from where you are joining. And yeah, if you want, over the choice event, you can share any kind of questions here. You can share your LinkedIn. You can share comments also from your experience. So first, I would love to know who is here today, from where are you joining? And I'm going to wait to see who dares first to share in the chat. So for me, it would be Lara today joining from Berlin. And I have the first person who was so quick to answer. So Shriat from Stuttgart and Matt from London. Hernan from... the company is Endresenhauser. Now I got it. Thanks. Roman from Munich. So here you see the chat. So welcome everyone. And yeah, please make use of it during the webinar. We will be giving introductions, but it's really about all of you also to meet, to exchange, to participate, to ask your questions. So I invite you to be really active in there. And I think you benefit the most the more you connect also with other people joining today. And then the second way how you can connect is our Slack community. So in our email introduction to this webinar, you got a link for Slack. And yeah, you can join there and stay tuned on the next webinars, but also on other insights and best practices also from other companies and customers. And yeah, a quick introduction to us, the Climate Choice. We are a climate tech company from Berlin. We do not mainly do webinars. We do these webinars really to introduce the climate community or everyone who is working on driving decarbonization in his or her company, to bring them together and introduce them to that topic. And yeah, we do the same with our software platform, the Climate Intelligence platform, where we really enable companies to gather and manage climate relevant data along the supply chain to make smart buying decisions and thereby climate choices to reduce emissions. And yeah, the next chance to be very interactive working with us is actually our next Scope 3 action group that will be starting in March next year. We have already this year a group of 15 companies from different sizes and industries who work together for like a few months along our platform, also to really go from climate management to decarbonization of the supply chain, road mapping, taking actions. And yeah, has been a wonderful journey so far. And we are very much excited to invite you to join the next batch in March next year. And the applications are already open. You find insights on our website, or if you're quick, you can screen here the QR code. And that almost brings me to our two experts today. But before that, again, I invite you to be active. So I have in the background support, and I would ask for the first survey to come up. I'm going to look in the chat if there is I think you see it now. So the first question would be, before we go into the topic with Robert and Yasha, do you already calculate a product carbon footprint in your company? And you have different options. Either I don't think so, so maybe you are not the one working with this, you don't know, or you are planning to do so, or you have already done something internally, or you have done already something for a few products, so not all of them, or you have done something for a lot of products already, and it's also externally validated. Or there's another option for an answer we couldn't foresee. So I see that a lot of you are already choosing an answer. And I would stop it and share the results so you see it. The most of you, 30% almost, have already done a product carbon footprint for a few products. And then I think it's very mixed. 40% are having not done it yet, or don't think so and are planning to do it. And then we have 10% of experts who have done it already and externally validated. So quite a mix. And that means I invite everyone to share where he or she is right now in the process. And I think we can all benefit from each other's knowledge. And then we have a second question, which should come up in a second. There is the same one for me at least. So perfect. Second question. So which kind of supplier data do you already use, or do you use supplier data in that process? So again, there is, I don't think so, or we are planning to do so, or yes, we do that and we gather the scope 1 and 2 data. Error. Yes, we do that. And we do not only gather emission data, but also climate risk data and targets. So a little bit a broader scope of data you're using and managing. Or yes, but we have not yet an annual process to do so. So maybe you did that once for the calculation, but you don't manage supplier-specific climate data yet on an annual basis. And again, you were very quick to answer. And I'm going to share the result. And again, 30% of you say we are in planning, and then another 30% are using already data, either scope 1 and 2, or even more. So that's quite incredible. So I am very much looking forward on a lively discussion then in the chat with your experiences. And I would invite Robert and Yasha to me on stage to join today's choice event. Hello, Robert. How are you? Where are you joining today from?
Hello. I'm joining from Hamburg.
Great. Yeah, welcome on stage here on our virtual one. And hello, Yasha. How are you? Where do you join from?
Hi, Lara. Joining from Berlin today. And happy to be here and excited for the webinar.
Yeah. So, Robert, have you expected such a mix of answers? Do you see that also, or did it represent what you see in the market, that a third of people already started doing something and another third is planning to do so?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that there's no really valid representative data on the stage of how many companies do what sort of carbon accounting and what the progress is. What we do see is that there is an increasing interest in doing it right. And I think that's very positive because credibility is a big issue, and companies know that there's this claims directive now from the EU, and we have a lot of court decisions in Germany, for example, how to use climate neutrality in commercializing products. So there's an awareness to do it right, and that's what we talk about today. So it's perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a good introduction, right? I mean, like we always try to give in these choice events also the message out that first start and then make it better. But yeah, you totally have the right term there. Like when you say my product is climate neutral, then you better have it right before you use such high wordings. So yeah, with that, I would love to invite you first to give a very comprehensive, I think, overview into which challenges we have to overcome in that area. And then later, I would also invite Yasha for some practical insights. And then we go all together in Q&A. So also for everyone watching, again, the invitation to put all the questions in the chat. And then I will moderate them in the end and look that we have a good discussion around it. So that would mean, Robert, you are happy to go. You can share your slides. And we see that we have you well set up.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
do
one
you
more
see
button.
Yeah, it works. Now we can go in the full screen.
Yes, it works. On my screen, I still have the survey data, results of the survey.
You might, that's a good tip. Maybe also someone in the audience has it. You just need to click it away. It actually doesn't go away.
All right.
From Zoom. Just click it away, then it's closed. Perfect. Yeah, I see your slides.
Perfect.
I'm eager to listen. You have the first part, so I will listen in the background and then come later back with questions and listening. I'm very interested.
Thanks a lot, Lara, and thanks for having the opportunity to talk to you guys about about credibility gaps in PCF calculations. And so first of all, just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Robert Werner. I'm managing director of Greenmiles, which is part of Hamburg Institut. Some of you may know we do there a lot of research and consulting there on a more upper level. We do consultancy to companies, industry, investors, to all issues related to carbon neutrality. So, and we cooperate with Climate Choice since many years. So we have a really wide range of customers. So we have a lot of insights in different branches and PCFs, lots of international stuff to handle, but sometimes just the normal business. So we can include in our lectures a lot of experience from the practical side. So for this event, as you can imagine, it is always a little challenge to think about what is the actual level of knowledge among the audience. So let me capture everybody in here and let me have a first check-in what we are talking about. So, I mean, as you know, we have these three scopes, and everybody's concerned about scope 3, but we should be aware that scope 1 and 2 from your suppliers basically and along the value chain is scope 3 for the next customers. And that's important when we talk about credibility, because it starts right at the beginning of this value chain. So that's how we have to bring this ideas of exact data, etc. We have to bring it down the tires to the very beginning of the value chain. And in this lecture, I would like to focus on especially on 3.1 and 3.3, and of course scope 1 and 2 is always included. But when we talk about scope 3, it is focused mainly on these upstream scopes. Well, companies are in a sort of tension between regulation and customers' demand and need. So on the regulation side, there's a lot of regulation that came up the past years, and it will even get worse, unfortunately. We have this taxonomy, we have reporting standards, we have, of course, ETS is still a big issue, and of course it's related to climate neutrality. We have CBAM, which is kind of monster and which will have an impact on the international way of how to calculate PCF, and everybody knows that. I mean, we're talking about billions being behind the value of these PCFs if they are lower or higher, you know. So that's pure money involved, and that's always important to address really exact methods. And we have a very German phenomenon, the Strompreiskompensation. It's a price compensation for energy-intensive industry, which is always also related to some carbon accounting issues. And of course, we have the RED 2 and 3. We have Delegated Act on green hydrogen, which could be a seminar for itself, you know, but it's a big deal because as you will see, the regulator addresses certain quality issues on green power. And we will discuss how this should be transferred to the carbon accounting. And we have, as mentioned, the Green Claims Directive, which is quite important for everybody, for all companies who have really end consumer communication. So that's the regulation side. And on the other side, we have the, well, let's say the voluntary effort. You know, we put it positive, but companies actually want to become climate neutral, and so they use different tools. They commit to CDP or SBTi, and they commit towards the customers, and they have a clear communication. For example, most well known are the car manufacturers. They promise their customers climate neutrality around 2030, which is really challenging. So there's a lot of effort to meet the expectations of customers. And on the other hand, we have a very important influence right now going on, because all standards are in a sort of review. As you might know, GHG protocol, Scope 2 guidance, but also ISO, they're reviewing their standards. And along with that, there's a lot of carbon accounting guidelines being developed within the branches. It's a very, very busy job right now to adapt, and companies sometimes have to serve 3 or 4 branches, and then they are faced with 4 different guidelines they have to fulfill. So this is the problems with companies right in the middle of the value chain. And I would like to address now some critical issues about credibility in this PCF calculating. So first of all, you're probably familiar with, some of you are, is the question how to, or if there's a recognition of offsetting to become neutral. And this is a really big issue in the future for negative emissions. So if negative emissions should be encountered in the carbon accounting, but it won't be our focus for today. But another issue is the free selection of certain scope 3 categories. So you just pick some of them and you just leave away the other ones. That's something which needs to be transparent, because it's very important and it can influence a carbon footprint very much. Data quality, that's a very, very big issue, and I will talk to you about this later on. And also it's about energy. We do have a problem with different options to account purchased energy, green energy, which can make a difference. And we have a big issue on this whole accounting of recycling materials. There are different methods, and if you use different methods along the value chain, it's just a mess, and you cannot really rely on the data which is then coming out. And also allocation is a big issue. So that's a rather complicated issue, but we need, if you talk about supplier-specific information, you have to deal with the mass balance approaches and different types of measuring exactly the carbon footprint as precise as possible. And this also is a very big issue. And but for this session here, I would like to use examples from data quality, energy, and recycling, just to highlight this. And maybe there will be some more sessions on this allocation stuff. Right, just as a summary here. So as I mentioned, standards and guidelines, they offer different accounting approaches and choices, and especially in energy and in recycling. And this is a real problem, because you do not something wrong if you choose a certain method to do your carbon accounting, but as on the value chain, everybody chooses it on its own decision, and it's not transparent. We have a really problem in, first of all, in possible double counting of emission reductions. And in the end, it's a problem of credibility and transparency. Yes, and the problem is that, as I mentioned, that the companies are, bothered from both sides, and they're really under pressure, and that means that they use those options within accounting, which minimizes the PCF best. Of course, everybody is doing this, but for the whole idea of carbon accounting, it's not really progressive. Okay, let's look at the case of green power. First of all, probably most of you already heard about those two different approaches to account green power. So we have this location-based approach, which really affects which is based on the electricity mixture, for example, within one country or one defined region. So you could basically also use this for a wider region. Basically, you could use Europe as a region, what actually some do. If I have a bad national mix, you try to tend to use, of course, the European one, because it's a little bit better. But you could also set locational mixtures to states within a country or counties or whatever. So that's what we see, for example, in Germany right now, is that a lot of companies located in the northern part of Germany, where there's a lot of wind power in the grid, they like to use the location-based approach, but they define the location, the own state where they are in, not the national mix, because that would be also a little bit worse. And this market-based approach on the other side is based on guarantees of origin. So you definitely account those electricity which is underlined and backed up with guarantees of origin, and this is accepted as to be 0 in your as an emission factor. And you see that in the end you can use both approaches, but you come up with a completely different emission factor. And this has this is an overview on how this can affect the CCF as well as the PCF. So we have those two leading standards, GHG and the ISO. And of course, they ask you to report or to show what which way you are actually which method you're choosing, and they recommend a certain hierarchy, but it's not really binding. So basically companies in practice use what is best for their PCF or CCF. And I'll give you an example why this is a really serious problem, especially in Europe, but we hear similar things from the US. Now let's take a PCF from a Norwegian company, for example, and you have a lot of hydropower in Norway, and this hydropower, of course, creates the national electricity mixture. And on the same at the same time, it is allowed to sell the guarantees of origin to other countries. In this respect, you have to take away these GOs and these green attributes from the national disclosure mix. But this is only the official national disclosure. So the grid electricity mix, located based approach, is to have up to some 95% renewable energy in Norway. And of course, a Norwegian company takes the location-based approach for carbon accounting, which results in very low emission factors and very low PCFs. Now, but as I said, the GOs are sold, for example, to Germany, and energy suppliers in Germany or other countries, they buy the GOs from Norway and deliver this green power to their business customers. And these business customers are companies. They use the market-based approach with GOs. So this results in the fact that the Norwegian PCF and the German PCF are low, but they use the same green emission factor in a double counting. And this is a problem, of course, and there's a lot of discussion now going on, and this also influences the review of GHG and ISO standard, how to avoid this. And it's not only about transparency. Of course, this is the first step, but even if you're transparent, it doesn't really help, because in the end, you have only one number of a PCF. You don't want to have different PCFs on the same product, So there's a big discussion going on. And of course, there are some companies in countries with a very low territorial mixture and factor. They try to keep this as the standard. And on the other side, those companies who actually are prepared to buy GOs and to make their products more effective, they support the idea of the market-based approach. This is, I'm not going through this slide. This is just to give you an insight that the GHG Scope 2 review process is very intense. So thousands of consultancies have been gone and made. So it's a lot of work, and it's very interesting because on this level, we hear and see all the input from different countries and regions, and they all kind of have the same problem. So you will get these slides, and this will give you some insights. Well, now what could be a solution in the future? We should be more specific on this renewable energy supply in different ways, and we have 3 approaches which we think is very important. One is the additionality, so that you as a company, or if you consult other companies, that you ask them that it's a difference if you just use a GO from a regular wind farm, whatever, or if you use GOs from a non-subsidized new installation. So this support for to speed up energy transition and so on could make a difference in your climate carbon accounting. And a second issue could be regional granularity with a really good proof and certifying processes. So the that would allow that you basically have a real granular, like for example a local grid or whatever, and you create a proof of data for this region. And the third level is temporal granularity. That means we are, especially for PCFs, we are heading to the use of renewable energy during the day for PV, for example, or when the wind is blowing. So you ramp up your production when the renewable energies are available. And that means you can actually create a PCF on an hourly basis, for example. And that's something where we see a lot of demand for. And we know that, for example, car manufacturers, they are checking this idea, if it's worth to buy only materials produced with PV power. The problem on an overall perspective, of course, is that you have then the night production is, of course, dirty and very fossil. And who's going to buy this? You know, so this is a really ongoing process and discussion. But there, of course, there are some front runners like Google. And they say we want to prove and make sure that we can show that we have 24/7 renewable energies, and we can precisely tell our customers where this energy comes from. And when there's a big data center, they want to buy the electricity from the local area. Yes. So, well, just a quick result of what we discussed for this credibility of renewable energies. So please ask your supplier to disclose the accounting method on electricity. But it also includes heating and cooling. And please keep in mind that GOs for renewable heating and cooling will be available probably around 2022. It is a decision made by the EU. So each member state in the EU have to establish GOs for renewable heat and cooling. And also the second point is for biomethane and hydrogen. That's also very important. And especially hydrogen is a special case, because here the EU made very strict regulations and conditions of what is considered to be green. And the question will be if this definition is also being applied for carbon accounting. So that's not really finished, this discussion. So please check if the footprints you get delivered and communicated are linked to regions with no geosystem. Then we recommend that the local grid mix is actually should be applied. But on the other way around, it is very important if you have PCF from countries with high renewable energy and a geosystem in place, then all suppliers should use geos to disclose electricity to avoid this double counting of green attributes. And think of the potential of granular geos to enhance data quality of PCFs. So that's a very good program, we think. There's a very good initiative, Energy Tech. Maybe some of you already have heard, but have a look at their website, and you also can join there. So they are interested to have as much as potential companies supporting this idea. And one thing, we need a lot of much more awareness of using primary data, that's also a problem of communication. So we need commitments and statements. Please use primary data wherever it is possible. And that leads me to the second case. No, it's the third case. I'm sorry. Okay, first of all, let's have one slide with a look at the problem of recycled material. Now, I'm not going into details. This is just to show you, this is a quote. The graph is from the battery pass. That's the guideline for carbon footprinting and batteries and recycled batteries. And here you see that there are basically, meanwhile, there are three different methods established how to incorporate your recycling material or the footprint of recycled material into your overall footprint, or in the PCF if you have certain amounts of recycled material in there. And that's quite interesting because the differences are here from 3.45 to 2.41, and now a new method where the EU tries to combine the previous 1 and 2. They now try to find a solution to overcome this, and they come down to 2.15. And of course, that makes a difference. If you scale this up to some million tons of material, then this has a great effect. So how to handle this? Please ask your supplier to disclose the accounting methods of recycling material. It is a very complicated issue. So we know a lot of persons, they gave up. It's very complicated, but whoever made this decision on this footprint had to make a decision on one of these methods. And you should find out the person who did it and ask them, even if it's a consultant, they have to answer the question why they took the avoided burden approach or the cutoff approach, for example. So it's important to understand. And this issue about recycling material, it's in many cases, it's now an issue for the branch associations and their guidelines they are developing. So please be active and ask them how they want to deal and what they recommend how to deal with recycling materials. Of course, in any case, increase proportion of recycled materials in your products. but be sure that the accounting for the amounts is really solid and testified. So there's also lots of threads about greenwashing on this, but that's a different session. Now let's come back to the data quality, because that's very important to understand that the quality makes a big difference. So we have, first of all, primary data and secondary data. Secondary data usually means that you take averages, so you use some sort of estimation, and of course we should go and use primary data wherever we can. They are much more precise and they are reliable and so on. I think it's obvious what the advantages are, but of course we have challenges with the primary data. First of all, a really problem in the whole system is that a PCF from upstream based on secondary data counts as primary data in downstream. So this is not the idea. So we have to work on that because it really changes a lot of data and converts it from a secondary data into a primary data, but it's not really primary. It's a calculated data. And this is what we think is differently from primary. But the problem with primary data is basically of course, it's costly, it's more effort, it takes more time, and of course, everybody knows this, that you don't have the time to go into it to ask 12 or 16 different suppliers, how did you do that, and so on. And I can understand that at a certain point, you decide, well, come on, forget it, I just take the average and it's done, but it's not good for the whole system. So we need more patience on finding out primary data. And of course, what is a big challenge is the digital and confidential forwarding of data and transferring. So of course, a lot of companies, they don't want to disclose how many material in total they have in this machine, or so that's an issue, and that has to be addressed. And basically you should work with testifying, with certifying, with external certifiers, so that they can keep their data secret. Well, I'll skip this one. This is a little bit a summary about the chances, how to put together a primary to work with primary data with guarantees of origin. So basically, as we will see GOs for electricity, heating, cooling, and gas, we can use guarantees of origin since this is a very reliable system, avoiding double counting, and this is a perfect source for primary data. So that's why we actually push this. And so we can put these timestamps on regional stamps, whatever. So this is a perfect system to work on primary data, especially for the PCF, right? So measures to enhance data quality. Well, ask your supplier to disclose the data quality. And be a promoter for the idea of using primary data. And so keep in mind that there's a lot of chances in the future about this issue and about GOs and how we can use this. And well, yes, be open and spread the word about this system. So in this respect, so for the moment, I just would like to say thank you for your attention, and I welcome your questions now on this point. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the overview. I think it can be quite a lot to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, everyone who has been joining today or is joining, I think is in that process, either planning or already in. So the moment you open the Pandora box of product carbon footprint calculation, there's a lot to dig into. There are already many questions. So I invite you, Robert, to maybe already have a look. And beside that, I would invite Yasha also on stage to give a small glimpse into how this practical work of getting primary data can look like. And then again, we see us in a bit for the discussion. But Robert, you have already now a small chance to look into which kind of questions are there in the Q&A, and then we answer them together.
Perfect. Also, Robert, thanks a lot from my side. So I'll try to keep it short so we have enough time left to discuss all of your questions. But I think it was very well explained and shown in detail on why it's so important to get more specific data. At the same time, we've seen in our small questionnaire here that primary data is not yet so much available from companies, and companies are currently in the processes of generating more and more data. The methods become more detailed, and this is a continuous improvement process. I think this is a very kind of like important point that I also want to make, that when especially working with suppliers and obtaining primary data, this is important to keep in mind. I want to talk briefly about the role and use cases of supplier-specific data, also beyond the PCF and CCF calculation, and want to start with really what we see in companies in our day-to-day work and in our conversations, that really embedding supplier-specific climate data is really becoming a really vital role in the whole notion of, okay, how do we reduce emissions, how do we report emissions, but also how do we plan our transition to a sustainable low carbon economy. And we specifically see, of course, the climate team is a key stakeholder and being mostly in charge of calculating PCFs, calculating CCF, doing the reporting side, and of course a stakeholder in really ensuring the credibility of what is communicated to stakeholders outside of the organization. But also the procurement team is becoming more central. I mean, we specifically work a lot with procurement teams because they are the direct interface to the suppliers, and then need to have a dialogue with suppliers, but also have more and more the role in actually reducing emissions in the supply chain. And this becomes, of course, very hard with this current situation of different standards being used, and some companies only starting to coming on that journey. But also product teams need that information to plan product design and also around emission targets. I mean, we heard a lot from companies. Automotive, I think, was an example in Robert's case. That more and more companies want to have low carbon products in the market soon, and have other goals that they communicate. So the product team really needs to plan around this and understand on how the products will impact the future of a company, but also then the sales team that is really needs to tell the customer about the product and the emission, and also its credibility. So really, we see that this is playing a more vital role across organizations, and moving from kind of like average information to really more and more understanding what are our business partners doing to support our climate targets is really really key at the moment across industries. And what we see also across companies, that it's very hard, of course, to track a lot of data from suppliers, sometimes thousands, tens of thousands of suppliers with different kind of like status and maturity in terms of the data that they can provide. Also the granularity of the data. Then we had, of course, like documentation. So is the data externally verified? Can we use that information? When we spoke to various companies that have thousands of PDFs to go through and check, and they're all a little bit different, of course, and companies differ in how they communicate about this. We heard also that a lot of companies don't want to share, especially product level data, just publicly, but only with specific customers. On the supplier side, we hear more and more, of course, the problem of assessment fatigue. So different companies requesting different data from them. And we sometimes hear sustainability teams saying, okay, this is like the fifth time that a company wants data, and it's again a different questionnaire, and more and more companies point to public available information. But also then ensuring that there's progress over time. So kind of like also having a theory of change in mind. And our role at the Climate Choice, and or how we work with this, is basic. What we already mentioned. We're really addressing this with a data platform. So we work with companies to address those key challenges and help them automate data collection. Of course, to doing this in a you can think of it as a data directory, right, where you can access data of different companies, request access data to data from different companies, and we always think about feedback loops to suppliers, so also on how they can work in order to improve their data availability. How can we, ensure that there's progress? We ensure, of course, audit-ready data, and also get public data. And to do this, we work with different companies around different industries, specifically here, for example, for O2 Telefonica, but also in the food industry with the HIP group, but also in various other industries, because we see more and more, of course, the standardization of not only, like with product level data, we've heard that there's a lot of questions, but also in general carbon accounting, a lot of improvements that are coming. But then at the same time, there's more and more standardization on how to communicate around climate management, and of course that's really good to understand more and more. Okay, what companies are doing to driving towards decarbonization. And a practical example, or how we also look at this whole data issue, I guess, is also that kind of like looking at, okay, what companies are already disclosing online, because the issue is often, as mentioned, that like you might not get always the data. Depends on your negotiation power, maybe, or it depends if you were the big one in the supplier relationship or the small one. But here, an example that a lot of data can actually be gathered from reporting, even some, of course, more and more also on product level information. And we basically get that data and create data profiles, so every company can just basically plug into this and use that data, and doesn't have to build their own data questionnaires, and we get more and more to having kind of like a plug and play solution here to help companies move forward. And just looking at the time, so we just have a couple minutes left, but maybe a little bit on how we see this being used in companies. Of course, I'm not going now into the carbon accounting part, because I think we had already a very great overview. Specifically with procurement teams, we see more and more that they need to understand on how ready are my suppliers, and generate scores, be it from publicly already disclosed data, or from companies that don't disclose anything. So to understand, okay, where are they, and how can we incentivize our business partners to improve, and also kind of like, even in the absence of product level data, have a target also for the procurement teams to understand, okay, how do we tighten our climate requirements year by year in order to drive our supplier base further to providing more specific data over time. As mentioned, this is a continuous improvement process. This is all where we see, like a lot of companies are only starting. There's some leaders in the space, and we need to continually work on that to help to improve the whole system. And I think maybe just as an example from sales teams, what we sometimes hear is, of course, the more credibility and the more you can tell about what you're doing also with your suppliers, and how you align your supplier base on your climate targets, and how you get more specific information from your suppliers, the better can be your sales team and your marketing team also equipped with information. Because as we heard, due to regulations, climate is really becoming a business decision maker, or decision-making factor, and it becomes revenue relevant. And I think like this is really good for the overall, of course, our climate targets. But of course, a big challenge for companies, and you want to stay ahead of the curve to really avoid, greenwashing or any issues in your communication around that. And with that, I think we're coming to questions, so we have some time to discuss what was already put in the Q&A. And I would ask Lara to come back. And
yeah,
already back. So thanks a lot for.
Yeah, thank you both. I think you had quite a challenge, Robert and Yasha, to be both together in that session. We should have made it 1.5 hours. So yeah, thanks for all the insights. I think it's really a huge topic. We definitely need to follow up on product carbon footprint calculations. And I would maybe start with inviting Robert. You might or might not have seen already the questions. Is there something you directly want to answer? Okay.
Yes, I would like to go through them. Very good questions. I start with a question by Svenja, really important. Which data source, data bank is recommended for emission factors? None of them. In a special they all have pro and cons. What is important is that they use newest data as possible, but this is not easy, and it's a simple, pure matter of capacity to update all the data. So especially in terms of electricity and heat and so on, I expect that the data should not be older than the past full year. And that's important. But all data sources, they have advantages and disadvantages. So there's no clear recommendation. Basically, you use all of them, more or less. You have to.
Okay.
But that's also something what a lot of companies do. They take the emission factor from this data source, which is the lowest. So that's also a kind of how to use the system. Okay, then WBSCD, yes, that's also this Pathfinder framework. It's also very important. But the problem, it's really a deep issue. But the problem is also for the market-based system, what sort of quality aspects do you address to this? So we have a big discussion, for example, if this IREC system, this global system, if this is actually credible and solid enough to be used for carbon accounting, and it goes really into detail. So I would like to, I can't give you a clear answer on this question, but all standards having this discussion about market-based and localized based. Then we have no, it's changed. We have
there were some comments on it. Maybe I move one question also to Yasha just to look at the time. I think there was one question. What about using supplier engagement platforms to like overcome that credibility issue? What would you recommend there, Yasha?
I mean, like we are a supplier engagement platform, so I think the basic point that Robert just made, I think like in general, maintaining data, up-to-date data is a very, very big effort. And I mean, we as a company spend 24/7 on this topic. And this is just a very, it can be part of your efforts and ensuring, because like every company building up the same capacity will be very challenging. And I think it's important to not only, of course, not only our platform, but there's various platforms out there that can help with providing really up-to-date information on companies without you having to maintain it. And I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah. I see Robert answered also one. I'm just trying to close so that not everyone has to stay there the whole lunchtime here. I invite everyone to ask us a question, send it via email. We will forward it to Robert or put it in the Slack later, and we can also forward it. I had one last question from the audience, maybe that I put to Robert as a final sentence, like, is it it was a critical, I would say, summary of the end. Is it really necessary to do the product carbon footprint? Is it like legally binding? Is a regulation forcing companies to do it? Sounds so complicated. So what is your
well, it's a very important issue you address here, because of course it makes sense to do it voluntarily, but the regulation is in a progress that you get forced to do it more and more. So for more and more regulative aspects and requirements, you need to work with PCF or even CCF, but usually PCF. And that's why we basically think that almost no one really can avoid the challenge to create PCFs. That's the truth. And hopefully in 30 years, when the world is completely turned into renewable energy, we don't need it anymore, you know. So this should be only for a small period of time, but I think for the next 3 decades, we need it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful closing word. It's just the effort we have to put in to go through that transition phase and make it a really good outcome in the end, to have a sustainable, renewable future ahead. And I think Yasha is also typing in a last answer. But maybe Yasha, for you as well, what would be your sentence to get people starting looking into supplier-specific data?
I mean, I always say just start, because you cannot wait until, you know, like you have the perfect data to take action. So I think like it's important to take action now to get everyone on board onto this topic, and, you know, share as much knowledge as possible with, you know, in your industry, with suppliers, to really drive this forward. Because of course the data is an issue, but in the end we want to reduce emissions, and I think the action is really needed. And we have to make sure that, you know, we're not kind of like going ahead and always try to communicate everything, but really go and say, how can we drive our actions forward and yeah, enable others. Sorry, that was a little bit long one.
Great. Yeah, so we have the targets to all become sustainable and not just claiming it. We have the measures and the data available, even though it's a work we have to put into. But then I hear out it's worth taking that and leading. And I invite everyone who joined today to get in contact with Robert and us for deeper questions, and then B, if you like, join us in 2 weeks. We have Josh Seidenfeld, who built up the renewable energy program. I think also with Apple and Meta. I hope I didn't mix it. But yeah, he will give us the insights in like how to decarbonize really supply chain by engaging suppliers into changing energy supply. So happy to see you there. And thanks a lot, Robert and Yasha, for sharing your insights and the work you do to transform industry. And thanks everyone joining, because you really put the work in on a daily basis. Thanks a lot. See you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.